and all that good stuff. Look, at the core, we're both Jackson guys. And I think before you had the radio show, I knew about you from you would post old pictures in like the Growing Up Jackson Facebook group.
Yeah, that's
or
right.
something like that. Like I think maybe from West Jackson.
West Jackson, yes.
What part of West Jackson?
I grew up by nearby French Elementary School, which is off of Bowling Street. So if you were to travel down West Capitol Street and it intersects with Bowling Street, it becomes Clinton Boulevard at that point. It used to be an overpass right there. Mm-hmm. And you take a ride on Bowling Street, headed to the north about a mile and a half, and the neighborhood I grew up in is on the left up there.
So my dad grew up over off First Avenue.
Know exactly where it is.
Over there, and my grandmother, Martha Bowles, owned a store, and then it was passed on to my father on Lynch Street. It was called Bowles Corbett. It was there for 60 years, 50 years. I've lost track of how long it was. It was there, and eventually the name changed to the Shortstop, kind of as Lynch Street evolved. And
I remember that.
But it was like an open air totem store initially.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And then it went to being bricked up in a store and air conditioning and coolers and and everything. It never had gas. But before the casinos came in, it was the #1 seller of draft beer in the state of Mississippi there in the 90s. So I've always kind of hung our hat on that a little bit, thought it was kind of cool. But their house, when they moved off First Avenue to Clinton Boulevard, was directly across the street from the country club, big kind of half octagon shaped house. Most people are familiar with it if you've ever gone down Clinton. But if you're going towards Clinton, I guess west, it would be on the left directly across from the
You're talking about the Shady Oaks Country Club, which used to be, is that what you're talking about?
Right past Minot Gardens?
Yeah. That which used to be the Country Club at Jackson.
That's right.
Before the Country Club moved to where it is now in North Jackson. But I used to work at the Cotton Bowl on Lynch Street, close by to where you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
that's neat.
Yeah.
And it's still a bowling alley.
Back when I was in the 8th grade, I think, 8th and 9th grade.
Really?
Worked at the Cotton Bowl. And then I moved over to Laurel Lanes, and I got offered a position to go across town to Laurel Lanes in North Jackson.
Right off 55, right?
Yeah, right there. That's right, behind the Piccadilly in that area back there. So, I started working when I was in the 7th grade, honestly, working at the Cotton Bowl. I ran the counter. I cleaned the place. I learned how to correct problems on the pin setters in the back. The mechanics taught me all that. And I was kind of a bowler. I enjoyed bowling when I was younger. I used to compete in bowling even as a junior bowler and so forth. Went over to Laurel Lanes and worked the counter there, worked in the back as well. And for 2 summers when I was in college, I worked as a janitor, and I cleaned the whole place up by myself, going in about 1 o'clock in the morning and finishing up about 9 o'clock in the morning, and then driving back across town to West Jackson.
Interesting. And our paths are very similar up to that point. My passion, where yours was bowling and you kind of got into something like that, mine was music and nightclubs and being in that environment, and I was sneaking in them way before I should have. And my family was part of bars and set little lounges around town that they had bits and vested pieces in, and my mom would change my diaper on a pool table at the office lounge down from Battlefield Park on I guess where Terry Road crosses over and turns.
Played baseball there, Battlefield Park. Yeah,
the office lounge right down there on the right as you would go into downtown. And so it kind of fast forward to when I got into the nightclub business. I remember changing my daughter's diaper on a pool table at my place out in Byram, Crazy 8, thinking, I said, well, this has come full circle. And hopefully we can break the cycle of being in the bar business at some point. But
that area of town, just thinking about it, was such a neat place to grow up. When I was a kid, just great salt of the earth families, working class families, if you will, and really strong Christian church going families. I went to St. Mary's. I was born and raised Catholic, so I know exactly where First Avenue is, not far away from there. So
I remember you posted a picture of the church that you went to.
I did.
One time.
Closed down. Very sad. Yeah, grew up in that.
When I started the Save Jackson page and I was trying to accumulate as many current photos of Jackson as possible, it was one of the places I went by and took some photos of, and just really impressed at the architecture of our old churches.
Unbelievable.
We've lost that. I mean, the big mega churches are nice. I don't want to feel like I'm knocking them. I kind of jokingly call them Six Flags Over Jesus a little bit. But just the old architecture of the Jackson churches from back in the day is just phenomenal.
No doubt.
The amount of effort that went into them. Let me ask you this as a Jackson guy. I think the demise of Jackson, so to say, is a fault of the attack on the middle class. Is we've force the middle class out of Jackson, and you don't have a middle class outside of a few little pockets. Do you think Jackson can be saved? It's a question every time I get interviewed because I do the Save Jackson or started the Save Jackson page. People ask me that, and I'm a little more pessimistic. I think pockets can be salvaged and be very successful if allowed to, and people will just leave them well enough alone. Fondren, Belhaven, the areas that haven't gone downhill, frankly. What do you think Jackson has to happen for Jackson to kind of turn the corner?
Yeah, the first thing you got to do is end the corruption in Jackson, in particular in the government. Something, Clay, I've been crusading for 25 years probably or more when I was in business, was to change the procurement policies. I have thought from the beginning that there's no way we'll ever correct the problems in Jackson until we adjust the procurement policies. And what I mean by that is Jackson is one of the cities, not a lot unlike a lot of other Democrat-run cities, where they grant preferential treatment to vendors of any good or service that the city procures and consumes based on their minority status. And so they have a requirement in that a vendor's bid must include a minimum amount of minority participation, and that's defined as including a business that is primarily owned by a minority. It doesn't mean minorities that work for the primary contractor or supplier, but rather there is a minority-owned business that is included in the proposal, and they score the percentage of that and include that in the way they award contracts and bids. And I've personally been a victim of that because my company did not meet that criteria, though we were a significant vendor to the city of Jackson. We did a lot of IT projects for the city of Jackson. Most of the time is because nobody else could do it, and so they wouldn't get any bids from anybody else. And we did our dead level best to try to include minority participation, but there are just, unfortunately, not a lot of minority-owned companies that could provide any value to the project. But I lost some as well. And it was, even though our proposal was a superior solution at a lower cost to the taxpayers, because of that lack of requisite minority participation, they would award it to a competitive vendor who really didn't have the skills to accomplish the goals of the project, and they pay more money for it. They pay a premium for it.
Well, it seems like a program that's ripe for corruption. And
it breeds
and we've seen it.
It breeds it.
I don't want to name any names, but there's one or two people that come to mind
no doubt.
Immediately
that
have benefited for way too long. Kim Wade refers to them as the minority set-aside program.
It's exactly what it is. And I can tell you I had a fantastic black account manager that worked for me for years that called on the city. That was his account. And he used to fume about it, that he used to say they're black for a living, is what he would say.
It's a phrase
He'd come back and get mad, Gerard, they're black for a living. I mean, because he knew we had a superior solution, and they turned it into a racial issue. And it's I used to describe it, Clay, as legalized reparations. Really what it was.
It's so refreshing to hear you use my verbiage. And because these are things that I say on the radio every chance I get, because I want to normalize calling out the problem and not running from it.
Agreed.
Look, here's the problem. Y'all may not like me mentioning the word black, but unfortunately, because y'all are playing this black for a living game, it's the problem. Not because you're black.
That's right.
That has nothing to do with it, but you're playing this black for a living hustle, and it's created a absolute inequality for the people of Jackson because a few people are benefiting. And I don't know how we got to this point where the people of Jackson seem to be okay suffering as long as people that look like them benefit from it.
I've observed that as well. I hope that's not the case, and I would like to think we could cut through that and explain, no, you're being harmed by this. But in a nutshell, I do not believe there's any way to salvage Jackson or improve Jackson until we correct the procurement problems. And something else, Clay, I want to point out that's disappointing, and you may be aware of this because I know you track what goes on in that legislature. You know, we've attempted to pass legislation to prohibit granting preferential treatment based on minority status and immutable characteristics. We can't get that passed in a Republican legislature.
I know it's something Fred Shanks is going to try to bring up again in this next session, and it's something I fully 100% support. I think it's just outlived its usefulness.
No doubt about it.
I know it has.
Well, when there was a time when there was discrimination involved in the other way, but now we've kind of jumped the shark, which is what this whole DEI, CRT, and all that stuff's all about. You've gone too far the other way. We've gone beyond just having an equal playing field. Now we're engaged in discrimination in the other direction. I personally, in my business career, experienced it.
Yeah. You think that almost has to happen? Sometimes when something pivots, we'll just say too far right, then it pivots back too far left. Maybe people can realize the middle's a good place.
Yeah, I hope so. We need a day of reckoning that hey, it's not too bad in the middle. And if the vendor, in the case of procurement, you got to be. I know that this often now is looked at as kind of taboo way to describe things. You need to be colorblind. You need to really select the vendor who provides the best value for the taxpayer, and that includes the quality of the solution, the experience, capabilities of the vendor. I mean, a lot of things need to be considered there, especially in my world, in the IT world. But if you want to know why the water system is messed up, a lot of that's because of those discriminatory procurement practices. We're not really focused on getting the best vendors to take care of that function of the city. And by the way, there's a lot of IT systems behind the scenes as well. I tried to help them with that and went to bat for them with some big of my partners, big technology vendors, to try to provide some special financing and stuff to the city. And they wouldn't take advantage of it because it didn't meet that minority participation requirement.
Yeah,
that was more important.
It is, and that it's almost like they don't care if the plane crashes as long as they're at the wheel.
So it's it.
And it's just amazing to watch. It was crazy to see Tate and the state step in to save Jackson's water system, and them fight against it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and now if you can sit back and just watch the mayor, and I don't want to make this whole thing about Jackson, but this is my hot button.
Yeah.
And you can sit back and watch the mayor try to fight Ted Hennepin and JXN Water, because it's all about the procurement process. I want control of the procurement. I know
exactly
you do.
Right. Of
I
course
saw you
do.
singing and dancing the night you won the Democrat primary reelection.
Exactly
and
right.
Singing hymns and stuff, because you knew that money was coming down the pipe, and you want a part of it. You want your cut.
So I guess I'd kind of wrap that up by saying there are a lot of other things that need to happen, but you're wasting your time until you fix that, because that's core to everything you do. You're going to have procurement involved in it, and you got to fix that problem before you move forward. Look, it's a function of money. It's economics at the end of the day. If you want to address the poor schools, the crime, the streets, the rundown houses, and everything else that are in the city, that's a function of money. So you got to come up with a way to attract investment in businesses and expansion. But if all you're concerned about is how can I personally participate in this activity, well, then you're not going to make any progress. You're not going to get any serious contenders.
Yeah, like I said, it's political reparations, and this
exactly
is the game they've been playing. Let me ask you one more question about Jackson, and we'll move on.
Sure.
This is something I've been bouncing around a little bit, because if you can read the tea leaves and you believe that several more indictments are coming down, I think Jackson's political leaders are going to be kind of wounded ducks. And I think if there was ever an opportunity for some legislation to come about to put Jackson in some type of where we could put somebody in charge of it, maybe they could still have a mayor, whatever, but we can kind of come in and get a little more state control temporarily.
Somebody to manage it, essentially.
Yeah, we need a city manager badly. I say we. I don't live in Jackson anymore, but
Agree.
I think I'm a firm believer that even though I don't live in Jackson, you don't live in Jackson, we have to have a successful Jackson.
Agree.
Because they've run out of stuff to burn and pillage. They're moving out into the suburbs, and God bless the immediate bumper cities who are keeping it at bay from the further ones out. But I think at the time it's for the state to be able to come in and pass some legislation where they can come in and try to get a hold of this thing, clean up some of the corruption, and just get it going right. I mean, I think the Capitol Police and what they were able to do with the water are great examples of the school, what they need to do with the school system more so than anything. I think it's time for some legislation to pass, and I know they've put a committee together. And I hate to keep mentioning one person's name, Fred Shanks, but I know he's on it. They're kind of nicknamed it the Save Jackson Committee, and I really want to see something significant come out of that so we can try to salvage the businesses. I mean, 2 iconic businesses have announced they're closing. I mean, Basil's in downtown today and Finian's yesterday. I mean, these are places that have been establishments in Jackson. We almost lost the Mayflower if it weren't for those guys that decided to step in and make an investment that, frankly, I wouldn't have made, even if I had it to make. I don't quite have the faith and the vision of Jackson, but I'm glad they did, and I hope we can support it. We don't need to lose too many more of these places. There ain't many left from our childhood. We got Chrishell's still left, and I can't think of too many more.
I agree.
I want to see something done before it's too late.
Yeah, we need a revitalization. There's no doubt, and I know a lot of folks, a lot of them are our friends, that live, as you said, nearby, but we've got somewhat of a buffer between Jackson and us, and we kind of just dismiss it and almost laugh at it to some extent. But the reality is it harms the state to have a capital city that is in such a state as the city of Jackson is. At a minimum, the entire state would benefit, I believe, if the capital city were a thriving community, and we don't have that.
Well, it's definitely affecting brain drain because we don't have that urban center for youth to want to stay in the state or move to the state to go and live. I mean, I didn't want to live in the suburbs till I was almost 40 years old. I liked the urban, the city, all that. Finally, the straw that broke the camel's back was the water and the DA throwing Anthony Fox in jail, one of their top cops. I said, man, if they'll do that, and that's a black guy. I was like, if they'll do that to him, and old loudmouth Clay Edwards over here has to, defend himself in the driveway or his family, what are they going to do to me?
Yeah.
And that was finally the straw that broke the camel's back. I said, Rankin County, here I come.
Yeah.
But all right, well, enough about Jackson. I can talk about that all day.